Hello and welcome to Module 6. We're going to be dealing with Chapters 7 and 8 in the textbook. Module 6 is coming to us at a very interesting time in American political history. We're going to be looking at the presidency and the executive bureaucracy that he supposedly has some control over. The presidency, when we look at it in the textbook, is a little bit different from how we're going to be approaching it in this module. You'll look in the textbook, will talk about the president as head of state and the president as head of government. And this is an interesting and useful way to look at the powers of the president, but it doesn't necessarily give us a full view of all of the different tools that a president has at his disposal. Tracking closely with this, we've developed maybe a value added of taking this course 6 powers of the president, and I'll map them onto the powers of the president as the head of state and as a head of government. First of all, the president has powers where he's representing the sovereignty of the United States, both internationally and to ourselves. This is typically the power of a head of state, a monarch in a constitutional monarchy, a president in a parliamentary system, a parliamentary republic, like, for instance, that you might see in France or in Germany, where they don't have a king, but they've created a position, an elected position, that is somewhat similar. It's more ceremonial, but in the United States, of course, the president has the powers to send and receive ambassadors, to make treaties. We call this the diplomatic power of the president. A lot of the impeachment talk is a discussion of maybe possible limits that there might be to the president's power over diplomacy. Congress often tries to assert a big role in diplomacy, and traditionally the president, though, has had the leading role. The president's power as the commander-in-chief, or his military power, is another element that we might talk about as president's power as head of state. So we're looking at the president as having these 2 powers, military power and diplomatic power. In addition to this, though, he has powers that are similar to his powers as head of government. With these, we're talking about his power over the executive branch. Sometimes we call this his administrative power, but maybe it's easier to understand as his power over the executive branch, or his executive power. His power to direct the bureaucracy, often through executive orders, signing statements the book talks about a little bit. These are really crucial powers of the president. An executive order, after all, has the same effect as a law in that it directs government agencies and the rules that they're supposed to establish to carry out laws. Now, they don't supersede acts passed by Congress, at least in theory, but so long as they don't violate the law, they have the same effect over regular people like us as though they were law. The president also has a great deal of power as it relates to Congress. The president has agenda-setting power. His State of the Union address, the budget that he submits, are very instrumental in creating an agenda for Congress, though Congress has a equal agenda-setting role. But one of the main reasons why the president has power over Congress is the veto. Any law that Congress might want to pass has to be signed by the president, or if vetoed, has to be overridden by a 2/3 vote in the House and the Senate. One could argue whether it's accidental or on purpose, but 2/3 is the same majority that's required to propose a constitutional amendment. So it's almost as hard to override a veto as it is to propose a constitutional amendment, though I would argue that proposing a constitutional amendment has this added difficulty of has the added difficulty of sort of opposing tradition in a way that overriding a veto might not. And then finally, the president has power over the judiciary. He appoints the members of the federal courts, as we've seen in previous chapters. He appoints the U.S. attorneys, the Solicitor General, the Attorney General. These are all appointees of the president, and they make policy and even U.S. attorneys' decisions on whether to prosecute people. The president has the power to pardon people. Now, this is limited by, of course, it being very unpopular. Somebody's convicted of a crime and you just decide to let him go. It can be very unpopular at times. But this is a virtually unlimited power of the president, as best as we can tell. Sometimes people grouse about that a little bit. So we're going to look a little bit too on 1/6 power of the president, which is political power of the president. First of all, the president is much more persuasive. He has much more ability and power, as we defined in previous chapters, power when it comes to having a great deal of popularity and members of Congress. And remember, most bills, most actions of Congress are not actually polled on a district-to-district level. People don't know how popular a provision is in their congressional district, except that the president, they know how popular the president is. They have a very good idea, in fact, of how popular the president is in their district, because there a lot of research has been done on which congressional districts are slightly more or slightly less supportive of the president than average. You should make sure that you look through the key terms, and you should read this really closely. Look at the slides, because, like I said, it's a slightly different approach than the book uses. The next chapter, Chapter 8, deals with the executive bureaucracy. So we look at everything from what's a bureau, what's an agency, what's a department, the names of the departments. You'd be well served to find out who the secretaries are of each of the departments. Each of the government departments is run by a secretary of that department, with the exception of the Department of Justice, which is run by the Attorney General. We're going to look a little bit into bureaucratic culture, that understanding that the person who decides to dedicate their life to working for the EPA might have a slightly different approach to what he thinks government should be doing than the person who decides he's going to work for the Bureau of Land Management. The Bureau of Land Management sort of views the land in the United States as for use, whereas maybe the EPA might look at it as for protection. And so, they have similar goals. After all, they want their agency to do well. They want to keep their job. They want raises. They don't want people looking over their shoulders. They don't want to get in trouble. The same role, the same goals of every employee of anywhere, right? But they also have differences, which is to say, the culture of their bureaucratic community. And so we look at that a little bit. Also, we have the 6 characteristics of a bureaucracy. We might be going into this with different ideas of what a bureaucracy even is. And so the 6 characteristics of a bureaucracy, developed by Max Weber, who was a German social scientist from just over 100 years ago. He died of the Spanish influenza in the immediate aftermath of World War I. And some have suggested that was a great misfortune for Germany. I guess it depends on how useful you think a social scientist is. But he was a member of the German parliament and a reformer who was neither a communist nor a fascist, which I suppose made him a big loss. Well, in any case, you'll look at the 6 characteristics of a bureaucracy. The video and the discussion build on this. The 6 characteristics of a bureaucracy video is pretty well done. I enjoyed it a lot. So I said this will be very approachable for the students in the class. So that's why I chose it. Also, when we're looking at this section, there'll be different specialized independent agencies that you might want to, that the slides will point to and that you should look at. Of course, for both chapters, pay a great deal of attention to the key terms. We're going to have another current events quiz. I strongly encourage you to pay a good deal of attention to what was going on in the news as I made up the quiz. I encourage you always to hurry and begin this process as soon as possible, because on Monday when you see the quiz for the first time, this information will be as fresh in your mind as ever. By the time it's actually due, I think that maybe it won't be as fresh and important. I'm sure government will have done some other amazingly interesting thing. All right, so I wish you all well. Good luck. I'll be putting out some information on how the exams went. In general, they look good so far, but I'm sure that it will be little consolation to someone who's done badly if everyone else did well. If you have a problem, if the things are not going as well as you had hoped they would be, there's still time to right the ship. We still have much of our grade remaining. So be sure to contact me. We've been able to help some people so far. I've seen some people's grades go up dramatically. I'm seeing some grades slip a little bit. Let's try to finish strong. If you think this is an easy class, then try to finish it as strongly as possible. All right, I wish you all well, and I'll see you, and I'll at least talk to you or talk at you again soon. Thank you.